Now let's take a quick look at how to produce some 8-bit style art in Adobe Photoshop. Now obviously this is very retro gaming, but the 8-bit style, which harkens back to the 1980s and 1990s in terms of the look of the technology of video games, is actually making a very strong comeback. A lot of very uh, good selling games here in just the past few years have gone back to this 8-bit retro style of art. So that's what we're going to do first. But before we even get into that, the first thing I'm going to talk about is I'm just going to kind of get on my soapbox here and talk about design. Now, what I could do, and I'll admit it's tempting because I'm a software fan. I love working on computers, and I know I'm not the only one. But what I did first was I actually did what video game designers are really paid to do. I designed. And yes, I know that, this is not a fun lecture to hear. And if you're rolling your eyes while you're listening to me and watching this video, I don't blame you, quite frankly. But the truth of the matter is, I can train my cat to do Photoshop. Um, Being good in Photoshop is like it's not even the bare minimum for getting a job as a video game designer in the industry. They expect you to know that just as much as they expect you to be able to breathe. Um, so saying I'm really good at Photoshop is not going to impress anybody that's looking to hire you or me in the video game design industry. They're like, yeah, well, congratulations. So does Tim's cat. Tim's cat knows Photoshop. Um, so we have to really work on our design and our creativity. And this is not a lecture about either one of those. But I just wanted to point out before I start working in Photoshop that before I started working out in Photoshop and recording this lecture, what I did was I created some designs in my head for some game sprites. This particular game that I might be working on is going to be a 2D like side scroller type thing that I've come up with on my own, and the overall description of the game would be me, your IMD or CIT 221 teacher, walking around the halls of campus trying to avoid paperwork. That's what this is supposed to be, a stack of paperwork. And every time that the character, me, runs into paperwork, it lowers my health. But if I attack the paperwork um, and do and do it, then I increase my score. This is a can of a citrus flavored, um, highly caffeinated soft drink that many people that know me know that I probably drink too much of. So these are the power ups. So I designed these first, and I'm now going to use these in my to create these in 8-bit style. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do one at a time. I'm going to start with this. I designed them, I drew them all. I came up with the idea in my head, and then I drew them out on paper real quick. This took me, like, as you can tell, about a minute. But that's because I'd already had the idea in my mind for what they looked like. Normally what I would do is I would draw like 5 or 10 different versions, but like I said, this isn't really much of a creativity lesson, so I just went with the first drawings that I came up with. I should have done more because the more sketches, concept sketches that a person does, the better the result will be. Your first result, technically speaking, or statistically speaking, I meant to say, your first concept drawings or whatnot, very seldom will be your best. But in this case, I'm pressed for time, so we're going to go with that. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. Going to create a new document that is the size of the marquee that I just selected, and then I'm going to paste, and I'm going to go to layers, and I'm on 1280 by 720 screen here, so that's why my screen space is really compressed, unfortunately. But anyhow, so that's what I've got right here. So I'm going to double click that layer name here. I'm just going to call it guide. But for now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go up to image size, and unfortunately that part is off the screen, so you can't see what I just did there. But I just went to the menu bar, and then I chose image, which is between edit and layer up the top of your Photoshop screen, and went down to image size, and then did this. So right now I have got my image size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, first of all, I'm trying to make a sprite that is only 16 pixels wide by 16 pixels tall. Now I could do that right now, but that would be a total disaster. Watch what happens. I'll just make that 16, and then I get that. Well, I can't use that, so that's just, yeah, not going to happen. Not a smart idea. Okay, I'm going to close this out too. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to image size here, maybe. Okay, so I know it's 550 by 605. What I need to do is I need to make it the same width and height. Well, now if I chop off some of the height, then either my feet or my head is going to get chopped off at the top and the bottom. So I don't want to do that, so I'm going to make the width 605. Now I don't want to do that in image size though. I want to do that in what's called the canvas size. So again, go to image and then go to canvas size. I'm going to make that 605 so that both numbers are the bigger number. And then I'm going to hit OK. And voila. And what I may do is I may position this just a little bit up. I'm using the arrow keys and the move tool so that the top of the sprite is at the top of the screen here. I'm going to go transform, just move that just a little bit. It's a horrible sketch in the fact that it's not very lined up. But now I know that I've got 605 by 605. Now, guess what? Remember when your school teacher said you're going to need to know math for whatever job you go to? Well, yeah, I didn't believe them either when they told me that, but guess what? You do. So what we need to do is we need to figure out 605 divided by 16. Well, that worked well. I can't even use a calculator. 605 divided by 16 is 37. I'm going to call that 38. So watch what I'm doing here. 38 times 16, rounding up just a little bit, is 608. So I know that 608 can be divided by 16 evenly. So I'm going to go over here. Probably should have done this first, but oh well. So there's 608. So now what I can do is I can divide this up into 38 blocks across and 38 blocks down, and then when I do shrink this back down to 16 by 16, it'll all work out just fine. Now there are a couple of different ways that I can set this document up so that it can be divided up into 38 by 38 blocks of solid color. The first one is, and neither one of them are fun. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Info, the Info palette, Info window in Photoshop, and I'm going to turn my rulers on, which is just Command or Control R. And then I'm going to click inside the vertical ruler, and I'm going to drag out from the side, dragging from left to right, while watching, and I wish I could point to this, keep an eye on that number that's changing over in the X position over here in the Info palette. When that gets to 38, then I know that I've placed a rule, a guide, right there at 38. Now, 38 times 2 equals 76, so the next one's going to be at 76. So I'm going to do it all over again. And this is about as much fun as watching paint dry. Then I'm going to do the same thing over and over and over again, all the way across. Then I'm going to do the exact same thing from the top ruler, vertically moving down from the horizontal ruler. First I'm going to go down to 38. I'm going to go to 76. And it's got to be precise. trust me, bad things will happen if you are not exactly precise. Even if you're off by 1 pixel, it's not going to be friendly. So now, if you'll notice, I have got these guides here that make perfect squares, and if I was to keep on doing that horizontally and vertically, I would eventually have these things set up to 38 squares across by 38 squares down, which when I shrink it down to 16 by 16 works out perfectly mathematically. I'm not going to do that, so let me just show you what else I do. I'm just going to go to View, Clear Guides, and I'm going to go to Layers, and I'm going to create a new layer. And this isn't necessarily the best way to do it. It's not even the right way to do it necessarily. It's just a matter of what you prefer. Well, okay, that's just great. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a 16 by 16 square. So I created a new line, and I'm just going to call it Guide 2. And I'm also going to lock the other guide layer, which I didn't mean to do. There we go. Now that's locked. And I hate working with this 1280 by 720 space. Nothing works right. Okay, anyhow, so go over to Info. Well, first of all, make sure you're on Guide 2. We'll just call it, actually, let's not call it Guide 2 because I'll get confused. Let's call it Grid. And then I'm going to go back up to Info, and I'm just going to I'm going to go to my Marquee Selection tool. I'm going to hold the Shift key down to constrain it to a perfect square. And I'm just going to keep on watching over there in my info palette until it gets to 38 by 38. And I'm going to fill that with, I don't know, a light gray. Or not. Why is that not working? Oh, speaking of caffeine, I think I need it. Oh, I locked the wrong layer because I'm a moron. Bet you caught that before I did. Okay, well anyhow, so now I'm back up to grid, and the grid layer is unlocked, and I'm just going to fill that with gray. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. I'm going to use the move tool, and move that up here, and line it up perfectly with the left side of the image. I know it's lined up because you'll see that little purple line up here. And hold the Shift key down and drag it vertically only up until a purple line appears at the top as well. And now I know that this little gray square is lined up with the top and the side of this. And what I'm going to do, check this out. I'm going to hit Control J, so that duplicates the layer. And now I've got two squares side by side, and I'm going to make one of them I'm going to make this one a lighter gray. Now check this out. This is the way I do it. This is faster to me, but it may not be faster to you. You may prefer the grid lines using the rulers, which I'm going to get rid of now because I'm not using them. So now I've got, that's the light gray, this is the darker gray, but I'm going to hit Command E. I'm going to go down like that to merge them together. So now they're all in the same layer, but I'm going to hit Control J again to float them into a new layer. Then I'm going to hold the Shift key down to move them horizontally to the right. So now I've got 4 38 by 38 pixel squares going to merge down again. I'm just going to keep doing this. There's going to be a lot of repetition here. Merge down, float up, there we go. I'm just going to lather, rinse, and repeat until the entire top row is filled and lined up perfectly. And see, I know it's perfectly because when I hit the transform tool, it lines up perfectly all the way across on both sides and the top. So there we go. I just need to learn how to use keyboard. So that's what I want. Now I'm going to hit Control J again to float up again into a new layer. Hold the Shift key down, drag down until it's the new layer that I just created is lined up perfectly. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and rotate 180 degrees. Uh-oh, guess who's getting a grid? Now I'm just going to lather, rinse, and repeat. Until I have a perfectly lined up grid. Like I say, if you know of a better way to do this, feel free to do it. And in fact, feel free to tell me too. All right, so now I have a grid that is 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 units across and 16 units down. So there is my grid. I'm going to slide this down to where it's underneath that. I'm going to go up to guide and I'm going to change the blend mode once I unlock it again because I keep forgetting to do that. I'm going to change that to multiply and there we go. I wish that was a little bit darker and I doubt, I doubt that doing levels is going to make that any. It's going to look like it's working and then I'll hit OK and it won't work. Except that time it made a liar out of me. Well, when I do that on a PC, for some reason it doesn't work. All right, so now I've got a grid and I've got a guide. So I'm going to save this and then start filling in the pixels on the grid in a new layer following the guide. But I'll do that in the next video.